Thursday, 3:47 p.m. The elevator doors had not even finished closing when I saw the security guard standing beside my desk. Not Dave from the morning shift, the one who always asked about my daughter's softball games. This was somebody new. Young, stiff in the shoulders, uncomfortable in the face, holding a cardboard box like it was a bomb. I am Nathan Cole. I am 54 years old, and in that moment, I watched a 31-year-old kid, a man wearing his father-in-law's last name on the side of the building, decide that my 24 years of building Meridian Freight Solutions' entire logistics platform were not worth $220,000 in retention bonuses. His name was Tyler Ashworth. He married the boss's daughter 2 years ago. 6 months later, he was suddenly executive vice president of operations, custom suits, boardroom swagger. Big words he barely understood. He had also started calling veteran employees legacy overhead in meetings he thought were private. But the truth is, those meetings were never as private as he believed. I had people in those rooms. I always had people in those rooms. What Tyler did not know, what he could not possibly understand when he handed my termination paperwork to a security guard instead of facing me himself, was that he had just triggered a dead man's switch buried in a contract, written by a woman who had survived the 2008 shipping collapse, the pandemic supply chain disaster, and 3 hostile takeover attempts. Then my phone buzzed. Bank of America. Automated alert. Pending deposit, $220,000. Scheduled Monday, 9 a.m. 3 business days, 72 hours of clock time. That was all that stood between Tyler Ashworth's little power move and the total destruction of Meridian's $380 million acquisition by Q&A plus Nagel. Because that deposit was not just money, not really. It was the only thing keeping my intellectual property tied to Meridian's corporate structure. And without that IP, without the system I had spent 19 years building, Meridian was just a name on a building, a fleet of trucks, and a business any hungry competitor could copy by morning. Ruth Okafor understood that long before anyone else did. She built Meridian from a single warehouse in Memphis back in 1994. Nigerian immigrant, engineering degree from the University of Lagos, $400 in her pocket, that was it. She started by moving auto parts for the Nissan plant in Smyrna when bigger carriers would not touch the contract because the margins were too thin. Ruth took the deal anyway and made it work because she understood something the giants did not. Logistics is not trucks. It is not steel. It is not warehouse square footage. It is information. Knowing where something is. Knowing where it needs to go. Knowing what is about to go wrong before anyone else sees the problem coming. That is what FreightSync became. Predictive routing, real-time inventory optimization, automated customs clearance across 14 countries. I built the first version on a second-hand Dell server inside Ruth's warehouse while she stood 10 feet away arguing with customs and border protection on the phone. We were a 2-person operation, and somehow we were running circles around companies with 100 times our resources. There was never anything romantic between Ruth and me. Nothing like that. What we had was deeper. And honestly, stronger. The kind of trust you only build by staying awake all night together during ice storms that shut down I-40. The kind forged when a driver called in sick and a client's production line was minutes from stopping, so you got in the truck yourself and crossed state lines to keep the wheels turning. She was the big sister I never had, and when her health started giving out 5 years ago, when lupus, that had been quietly eating at her joints for a decade, finally began catching up with her, she did something I did not fully understand until the moment Tyler had me walked out. She wrote a clause into my contract. It said that if my annual retention bonus was not deposited by its scheduled date for any reason, including termination, voluntary or involuntary, then full intellectual property rights to FreightSync would automatically transfer to me. Not to Meridian, not to her family, to me, personally. Filed with the state of Tennessee, notarized. Sitting in escrow at a law firm on Union Avenue, the same law firm Ruth had used since her first warehouse lease. That clause was her insurance policy. I can still hear her voice. We would sit out on the loading dock after hours, sweet tea in our hands, watching trucks pull out for overnight runs, and Ruth would say, "Nathan, I have seen too many good companies hollowed out by people who marry into power and mistake proximity for competence. If that ever happens here, I want you to have the only thing that matters." At the time, I thought she was being dramatic, but the truth is, she was being prophetic. The security guard held out the box. Inside were 24 years reduced to a handful of objects. A photo of my wife Karen and our daughter Lily at Shelby Farms Park. My old coffee mug with the faded Memphis Grizzlies logo. A small framed letter Ruth had written me on Meridian's 10th anniversary. The guard could barely look at me. "Sir, I need to escort you to the lobby." I looked at him and said, "I know the way." I have been walking it for 24 years. Outside, the Memphis heat hit me like I had opened an oven door. Late September, but Tennessee does not care much about calendars. I sat in my Tacoma with the engine running and the air conditioning blasting, staring at the building where I had spent more than half my adult life. The Meridian logo gleamed in the afternoon sun, the same logo Ruth and I had argued over for 3 weeks before she won. As usual, then I opened the countdown app on my phone. Monday, 9 a.m., 65 hours, 13 minutes, that was the clock. So I called the one person who needed to hear it from me before anyone else. Karen picked up on the second ring. She was a pediatric nurse at Le Bon Hur Children's Hospital, the kind of woman who could hold a screaming toddler with one arm and start an IV with the other without even blinking. After 22 years of marriage, she could read my voice the same way she read patient charts. Fast, exact, no tolerance for nonsense. What happened? Tyler happened. She was quiet for 3 seconds. That was her processing time. Karen never reacted before she thought, which was one of the things I loved most about her and one of the things that made arguing with her nearly impossible. How bad? They walked me out with a security guard, box and everything. That little, she cut herself off. In the background, I could hear our 9-year-old granddaughter Maya singing something from the back seat. Karen was picking her up from school because our daughter Lily and her husband James were both working double shifts at FedEx that week. That is Memphis for you. Half the city runs on logistics, and during peak season, everybody works. Then Karen asked the question that mattered. What about the bonus? Scheduled for Monday, which is exactly why he did it Thursday afternoon, gives HR the whole weekend to process the termination. By Monday morning, I am out of the system. Deposit gets canceled, and freight. That was when I told her the rest. I told her about Ruth's clause, about the escrow, about what would happen Monday morning if that $220,000 did not hit my account. Karen went quiet again. Longer this time. In the background, Maya was asking if they could stop at Huey's on Madison for a burger. Then Karen said something that cut straight through everything. "Nathan, that is 340 people's jobs you are talking about. Cheryl in accounting just had twins. Alex on the loading dock is 6 months from his pension." I know, do you? Because right now, you sound like a man who has been planning this. I gripped the steering wheel and stared at the building. I have not been planning anything. Ruth planned this. I am just the fail-safe she built. That is a nice way to avoid responsibility for what happens next. She was right. Karen was almost always right, which was deeply irritating and probably the main reason our marriage worked. I drove home through streets I had known since before Memphis had a basketball team. Past Sun Studio, where tourists lined up to stand where Elvis stood. Past Central BBQ, where Ruth and I had closed our first $1 million contract over pulled pork sandwiches and coleslaw. Past the FedEx hub that employed half our neighbors and reminded everyone in this city that moving things from point A to point B is sacred work. Our house in Germantown was quiet when I walked in. Karen had taken Maya to the park, probably because she knew I needed space and because she did not trust me not to do something stupid if I started making calls while I was still angry. On the kitchen counter, she had left a note in that precise nurse handwriting of hers. "Do not make any calls until I get home. I mean it." I went to my home office anyway and opened the laptop. There, on the main screen, was a monitoring dashboard I had built 3 years earlier, when Tyler first started nosing around Meridian's technical infrastructure, with all the confidence of a man who had Googled supply chain management twice and now thought he understood global logistics. The dashboard showed me everything: freight sync server status, access logs, API call volumes, client integration health. And most important of all, the licensing verification system that Q&A plus Nagel's due diligence team had been checking every single week for the last 8 months. Every Monday at 9 a.m., an automated system verified that FreightSync's license was active and properly assigned to Meridian. If verification failed, if the license holder changed, or the employee credentials tied to it had been deactivated, then an alert automatically went to 3 people at Q&A plus Nagel. Their general counsel, their chief technology officer, their head of North American integration. I did not build that system. Ruth did, 3 years earlier, as part of the acquisition due diligence process. Back then, I thought she was being overly cautious, but really, she was laying a tripwire. I checked the timer again. 64 hours, 47 minutes, 18 seconds. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Daniela Reyes, our senior systems architect. I had hired Daniela 6 years earlier, out of Georgia Tech. She grew up in Dalton, Georgia, where her parents ran a small trucking company serving the flooring industry. She understood logistics the way most people understand breathing. Instinctively. Completely. Mr. Cole. Tyler is in the server room with 2 guys from Deloitte. They are asking for FreightSync admin credentials. What do I tell them? I called her immediately. Tell them the truth. FreightSync admin access requires biometric verification from the license holder. That is me. Or at least it was until about 2 hours ago. Daniela was silent for a moment. He does not know, does he? About the license structure. He does not know about a lot of things. Then she asked the question everyone serious eventually asks when leadership starts acting stupid. Mr. Cole, should I be updating my resume? Not yet. But keep your options open. After we hung up, I sat back in the chair and let the anger settle. It was not the hot kind anymore. That had burned itself out in the parking lot. This was colder, sharper, the kind of anger that helps a man think clearly. Tyler had fired me for the same reason insecure people always fire the one person who actually built the thing they are pretending to run. Because my competence made his incompetence visible. Every time Q&A plus Nagel's team asked a real technical question, they asked me. Every time a client had an integration problem, they called me. Tyler sat in those meetings, nodding along to conversations he did not understand. And sooner or later, he decided the easiest way to look smart was to remove the man making him look dumb. The $220,000 was just the excuse. Cost optimization, he had probably called it. Streamlining leadership structure. The kind of MBA language that sounds decisive on a PowerPoint slide but turns catastrophic the moment it touches real life. Friday, 7 a.m. I woke up to find Karen already dressed in her scrubs, standing in the bedroom doorway with 2 cups of coffee in her hands. I have a 12-hour shift. Maya is at school until 3. Lily will pick her up, which means you have the house to yourself, and that means you are going to sit in that office and stare at that countdown timer like it is a campfire. Probably. Nathan. She sat on the edge of the bed and handed me a cup. Her eyes had that look, the same one she used on parents in the NICU when she needed them to hear something painful and hear it clearly. Whatever you decide to do Monday, remember who you are. You are the man who drove to Tuscaloosa at 2 a.m. to fix a server because 200 people's paychecks depended on a shipment arriving on time. You are not the man who burns things down. I looked at her over the rim of the coffee cup. What if the thing that needs burning is already on fire and I am just the one holding the extinguisher? She held my gaze for a second, then put it out. But do not pretend you did not see the matches. She kissed my forehead and walked out. A moment later, I heard her car pull away from the driveway, and the whole house went quiet. The kind of quiet that does not comfort you, the kind that waits for a decision. Friday, 8:15 a.m. The phone rang with an unknown 901 number, Memphis. I answered, and a woman's voice came through calm, clipped, professional. Patricia Langford, General Counsel for Q&A Plus, Nagel's North American Operations. My pulse did not jump, but the truth is, I had been expecting this call, just not this quickly. Mr. Cole, she said, I will be direct. Our licensing verification system flagged an anomaly this morning. Your employee credentials at Meridian appear to have been deactivated. Can you confirm your current status? I looked at the dashboard glowing on my screen, then out into the empty house. I was terminated yesterday afternoon. There was a pause on the line. Not a long one, but long enough to hear someone on the other end inhale sharply. Mr. Cole, your name appears in 3 separate sections of our acquisition agreement as essential personnel. Section 8, Technical Integration Leadership. Section 11, IP licensing verification. And Section 14, Post-Acquisition Continuity Guarantee. I am aware. Then you understand that your departure creates significant compliance issues for this transaction. I leaned back in my chair. The strange thing was, by then, I was no longer angry in the way I had been Thursday afternoon. The heat had gone out of it. What remained was colder, cleaner, more dangerous. I would suggest raising those issues with Meridian's current leadership. We have. Mr. Ashworth told us, and I am quoting here, that the technology runs itself, and your role was largely ceremonial. I let that sit for 5 full seconds. Then I answered, Miss Langford, FreightSync processes 2.3 million routing decisions per day across 14 countries. It interfaces with custom systems in the EU, the USMCA zone, and 6 Asian markets. It requires weekly calibration updates that account for seasonal shipping patterns, fuel price fluctuations, and regulatory changes. Does that sound ceremonial to you? No, it does not, Mr. Cole. We will be in touch. When the line went dead, I looked at the timer again. 49 hours, 45 minutes. The dominoes were moving exactly the way Ruth had designed them to move. Not because I was pushing them, but because Tyler had yanked away the one piece, still holding the whole thing together, and then told himself it would stay standing anyway. By Friday afternoon, the leak had made its way into the local business press. Memphis Business Journal ran a piece about leadership restructuring at Meridian. Carefully worded, polished, controlled, but the comments underneath were none of those things. Industry people knew how to read between the lines. When a company's chief architect gets walked out 3 days before a major acquisition closes, that is not restructuring. That is panic wearing a necktie. Saturday, 10:30 a.m. I was standing in the backyard grilling burgers for Maya when my phone rang again. Douglas Whitfield. Doug had been on Meridian's board since Ruth's second warehouse, back when the company's entire infrastructure was a fax machine, a Rolodex, and sheer willpower. He was Meridian's longest-serving board member, one of the few people left who remembered what the place looked like before polished conference rooms and acquisition decks. Nathan, the board held an emergency call this morning. Tyler has been suspended. It took 1 day. Patricia Langford from Q&A plus Nagel sent a letter to every board member at 6 a.m. She used the phrase, material misrepresentation of technical capabilities 3 times. Richard Ashworth is beside himself. His daughter is not speaking to him because he suspended her husband. His wife is not speaking to him because his daughter is not speaking to him. The whole family is coming apart. I should have felt satisfaction. Honestly, I expected to. But the truth is, what I felt was heavier than that. Because once the shock wore off, the picture got clearer. This was no longer about Tyler getting embarrassed. It was about what happens when stupidity at the top drops through the floor and lands on the people underneath. So I asked the only question that mattered. Doug, what about the employees? That is why I'm calling. If this acquisition collapses Monday, we are looking at layoffs. Maybe 150 people, maybe more. We cannot sustain current operations without Q&A plus Nagel's capital injection. I stood there with the tongs in my hand and watched Maya at the patio table stacking burger patties onto a paper plate, her tongue sticking out just a little the way it always did when she concentrated. 9 years old. Absolutely serious about her job. She looked so much like Lily at that age it almost hurt. What are you asking me, Doug? I am asking if there is a way to save this. Not for Tyler. Not even for Richard. For the 340 people who show up every day and do the work. The smoke from the grill drifted across the yard. Maya looked up and asked if the cheese slices were ready yet. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and then went quiet. I said, I will think about it. Saturday night, after Maya had fallen asleep, Karen and I sat together on the back porch. The air had finally cooled enough to make being outside feel human again. Crickets filled the silence between our words. Somewhere down the street, somebody was playing Otis Redding loud enough that only pieces of the song reached us, like a memory coming in and out. Karen looked at me for a long moment and said the one thing I had been trying not to admit to myself. You already know what you are going to do. Maybe you are going to walk back in there Monday morning and fix it because that is what you do. You fix things. I stared out into the dark yard. Ruth would want me to protect the work. Ruth would want you to protect yourself for once. That landed harder than I expected. Karen had watched me give 24 years to Meridian, same as I had. She had watched the missed dinners, the midnight server failures. the phone calls during family vacations. The way logistics had never just been my job, but had become the rhythm around which our whole life moved. She had earned the right to say that. She would not want you to hand them one more day of your life just because some kid with a corner office made a stupid decision. She was right. Again. But there was something else now. Something I had not told her yet, because I had not known how to say it out loud. There is another factor. On Friday, while everybody at Meridian was trying not to panic, I got an email from Martin Reeves at XPO Logistics. They want to license FreightSync directly. 3-year deal, $12 million total compensation. They want me to build a team and run it independently. Karen turned and looked at me under the porch light. I could see the math working its way across her face before she said a word. $12 million. Yeah, that is life-changing money, Nathan. I know. Maya's college. Lily and James could stop working double shifts. We could actually retire before our knees give out. I know all of that. But you are thinking about Cheryl's twins and Alex's pension. I looked down at my hands. I am thinking about 340 people who did not do anything wrong. Karen reached across and took my hand. Her fingers were rough from years of washing them 50 times a shift. Years of pulling gloves on and off. Years of doing work that mattered in rooms where mistakes had names and consequences. Whatever you decide, I am with you. But this time, Nathan, put us first. Just this once. Put your family first. Sunday was the longest day of my life. I went to church at Bellevue Baptist and sat in the back pew. I did not sing. I barely heard the sermon. I nodded when people nodded, stood when people stood, but inside, I was somewhere else entirely, weighing the lives of 340 employees against my own family's future and feeling like either choice would leave a mark. After church, I drove to Ruth's house. She was on the front porch in her wheelchair, wrapped in a blanket, even though the heat still sat heavy over Memphis. Lupus made her cold all the time now. That was one of the cruelties of it, the body turning against itself in small, relentless ways. I told her everything. From Tyler, to the firing, to the countdown, to Patricia Langford, to the board's panic, to Doug's phone call, to XPO's $12 million offer. Ruth listened without interrupting me once, which by itself was enough to tell me she knew how serious this was. Interrupting people had always been one of her spiritual gifts. When I finished, she stayed quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I did not write that clause so you could become a martyr, Nathan. I wrote it so you would have choices. Real choices. The kind I never had when people tried to take what I built." I looked at her and asked the question I had really come there to ask. What would you do? Ruth's eyes sharpened. I would make them earn it. Every single one of them. Not Tyler. He is done. But the board. The employees. The people who stood there and watched that boy walk you out and did not say a word. Make them look you in the eye and acknowledge what you are worth. Then decide. That was Ruth. Even sick, even tired, even wrapped in a blanket in the Tennessee heat, she still spoke like someone who had survived too much to waste words on anything soft. By the time I drove home, I knew what Monday was going to be. Not the outcome, not yet, but the shape of it. Monday, 8:30 a.m. I walked into Meridian's lobby, wearing the same blue Oxford shirt and the same khaki pants I had worn almost every Monday for 24 years. No drama, no revenge costume, no theatrical entrance. Just the uniform of a man returning to the place he had helped build. The receptionist, Tamara, looked up and froze. "Mr. Cole, they said you were, we heard conference room B, Tamara. They are expecting me." She nodded too fast. The room was full when I walked in. Doug Whitfield. Richard Ashworth, looking like a man who had not slept since Thursday. 3 other board members. And on the video screen, Patricia Langford from Q&A plus Nagel, her face controlled and unreadable. Tyler was not there. That, by itself, told me plenty. I sat down, opened my laptop, and set it in front of me. The countdown timer was still running. 27 minutes, Richard spoke first. "Nathan, I owe you an apology that goes beyond words." Tyler's actions were, he stopped, swallowed, tried again. They were a betrayal of everything Ruth and I built this company on. I looked at him for a second. "I appreciate that, Richard, But apologies do not solve licensing problems. Patricia Langford leaned forward slightly on the screen. Mr. Cole, Q and A plus Nagel needs to understand the current status of FreightSync licensing.